Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is freestyle chess. We are talking about freestyle chess. Do you like freestyle chess? Anyway, enough about freestyle chess. Magnus Carlsen. That is what you clicked onto this video for. I have been critical of him in this playlist of Freestyle Chess Grand Slam Tour 2025 because we've gone back and he has not dominated this format the way you would think he normally dominates. He has been world number one for well over a decade in classical chess. But freestyle, he's yet to really win the big one. And, there's been such a debate over this freestyle tour that it's almost like, what if Magnus doesn't become world champion? Well, he didn't win in Germany in the first tour event. Vincent Keimer won. Magnus only finished third place. But he did reach the final in Paris. So will Magnus Carlsen finally hold his nerve and get a win in a freestyle chess tour event? And there's only one way to find out. But of course, the man opposite him is the greatest rival to never materialize, really. Hikaru Nakamura, the age-old foes that they are. And they got this position. As I've said before, freestyle chess is to take you out of chess theory. But with that said, the more and more these players play this, they're getting a feeling of how to play. And it's very interesting listening to the discussions that you listen to, that the players get to have before each of these rounds, because they're starting to pick up patterns. And that's what chess players do, of when the knight's in certain positions, where does it go? When the bishops are in certain positions, how does it go? So Magnus Carlsen starts off with the white pieces here, and we've got c4, c5. They do play best of two, but this was the deciding game. Knight to c3, knight to c6. So far, it could be an English game, an English opening, but which I do have a video about, should you so care. Sorry, I'm slurring my words, but it's late. But we're wearing white because we want Magnus to win, unless you don't support Magnus. But he gets a nice white jacket to wear at these events. All the players get different color jackets. Knight now to f3. So he's put his knights on traditional squares, and it could still be an English opening. e5. It could still be an English opening. b4. Now it's definitely not an English opening. And this looks like a pawn sacrifice. You're like, but isn't that a pawn sacrifice? Well, the best move is to take it, to play c takes b4. But then I imagine Magnus's idea was that this pawn is now not controlling the center, so I will get to play d4, and at the moment I can play knight d5. And my knight now stands here unopposed, which it could already, and now there's no real way for you to kick it out easily. I impacted the development of this bishop long term, and it's really good. For me, I'm targeting that pawn, which will have to be pushed forward, but the best move according to the engine is to play d6. And I don't know what Hikaru didn't like about this position, but he doesn't take the pawn. He kind of believes Magnus's bluff slightly and plays knight takes b4. So he takes with the knight, which is really funny. But I don't understand why he wouldn't take with the pawn. We get knight takes d5, now hanging the pawn in the center. That's the thing. When the knight was there, you had to first move this knight out the way before you could recapture. So he doesn't defend his pawn in the center, gives it up completely. And now we get g6. And maybe this was his idea. He's like, well, look at this. Look at what I have here. Of course, this was also the event where Hikaru Nakamura threatened to kill Jan Nepomniachtchi. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm sure I'll talk about it at some other point, but you can find the clip on YouTube, where Hikaru was in the confessional claiming to commit mass murder. d4, we defend the knight in the center. Castles by Hikaru, which is really funny. He just swapped the king and king around. The king and the rook around. Sorry, my brain is not braining. The English is not Englishing. He just swaps them around because that's how castling works. It's really funny in freestyle chess. And we get knight to g4. And now Hikaru has one move only. You can see the blue arrow on the board. It's telling you what to do. Because he's in big trouble. That knight has now jumped out the way and it is going there. And there are a couple ways to stop them. But the best way is to just take this pawn. You have to take this pawn. And Magnus may have been thinking of sacrificing the rook and, jumping his knight here or getting the bishop here because the rook is kind of trapped, but you can play like knight here. So you can play something like this, I think. And cd4, knight h6, check, king h8, and something like knight b5. Knight b5. And this position is still holdable and perfectly fine for white. And the king is a little bit exposed. That pawn is going to fall, so you've got to find a way to defend it. It's not easy to defend it. And this position is holdable for Hikaru. But he plays bishop g7. And you can see he is down a lot on time. And now Magnus Carlsen has only one move. And he doesn't find it either. He plays d takes c5, which is a miss according to the engine, because he had bishop here, which is, threatening to get the knight involved. And now this is opened up. And you would think, oh, isn't this good for black? Because now this is put under pressure. Actually, I can just play like bishop e2, and then you're the one who's under pressure. So we get d5. And now Magnus Carlsen has a winning move, and he finds it this time, knight to h6, check. King h8, you have to play it. You can't take the knight. You can't afford to. Because the funny thing is, right, if you take this knight, we take, now to not lose your rook, you've got to go here. And then probably just knight takes d5, and this is completely crushing for white. We get something like, mate's threatened. The only way to avoid mate is to play f6 because of all of this. So completely crushing for white. So you cannot take the knight. King h8 anyway gets played, and now we get g4. Magnus Carlsen is just going for it. He's like, I don't care that it's Hikaru, I have to attack. Bishop to e6. When you get a position like this, you have no choice but to attack. We defend this pawn in the center, which was under a little bit of pressure, in case you didn't notice, because we had now bishop, knight, and rook staring at everything. So we have to defend the pawn. The only way to do that is with the bishop. And now we get c takes d4, knight takes d4, bishop takes, and bishop b2. Look at that. Out of nowhere. You're like a brilliant move. Out of nowhere. Magnus Carlsen sacrifices the knight. And you have to take it. That's the funniest bit here. There are a couple of considerations here. The best move is probably to play bishop to e6, according to the engine. Bishop c6 is also okay. You have to get this light squared bishop out of the way. You can't take the knight, really. So we get bishop e6. Let me reload the board. Bishop e6. And now g5. Why couldn't you take the knight? Let's explore that for a second. So if you took the knight, in this position, if you take the knight, what happens? Well, I probably take this with check. That's probably the easiest way to win. You would come back, I would take again with check, or you'd play king h8, and then I still give check, and it's just completely winning for white. The black king is just exposed on this diagonal. Just slaughtered. This queen as well. Not playing the same attributes in the game. Not playing the same effect. It never got out. This rook, while powerful and staring at what can be at times an unprotected rook, not playing in the game. Hikaru just never got his pieces out, so you can't take the knight. You have to retreat your bishop, so that when you take the bishop, it does not come with check. And now we play g5, locking our knight in. Rook takes d1, queen takes d1, and now queen c8. We're finally getting the black queen in the game. It's too late. Rook g3. We're not castling, says Magnus Carlsen. Queen takes c5. I don't care about that pawn. Knight e4. Queen d5, offering a queen trade. We take, and we go here. Look at Hikaru's pieces. They are doing nothing. Magnus's pieces are surrounding his king. Look at all of this. Look at Magnus's pieces. Like, the only piece Hikaru's got that's even slightly useful is this light squared bishop that's got little to no targets. It can take that, I suppose. Magnus is completely crushing. And now we get bishop takes a2, which is a genuine mistake, and Magnus Carlsen is completely winning if he plays one of two moves, and that is to play rook a3 to go win the pawn and target the bishop, which is just a fork, or he can play knight, what's that? H, g4. He can bring this knight back as well. What does he play? Probably simple, rook a3. Bishop retreats, and we take a pawn. Knight now gets out. Now we're starting to develop the black pieces. It's too late. We play simple f3, disallowing the knight from getting in here. And now rook c8. And Magnus Carlsen is winning, but he only has one move. He has to find it. Otherwise, it's going to be a draw. Hikaru might have just found the way out. He has to play e4. You can see it there on the board. He doesn't. He plays bishop e5 and allows knight f5. Offering some exchanges and getting the knight in to attack this king and the rook coming down. And it is super, super dangerous here for white. So we have to take, and we take with the bishop. It's actually better to play g takes f6 because your king might be able to get out in the future. It's not still pinned on the back rank. So you could like take and get your king out eventually. It's actually better to take with the pawn, but we take with the bishop. Now rook takes b7, and now Magnus's only hope really in this game. The pieces are all level. Magnus is up a pawn, but that pawn can become a weakness. It can be targeted and stuff like that. So he has to keep his pawns alive, and he has to keep threats on this king. He has to keep this king boxed in, and not blunder some perpetual somehow with his king. So let's see what happens. Bishop e6. Okay, rook b4. We bring the rook back slightly, but we're now defending important squares. We trade the bishops, and the king slides to g8. King f2, rook c5. Normal endgame stuff. Magnus is still winning. King g3. h6. Now we're looking to undermine the defense of the bishop. We play g takes h6. King comes up. And now the only move for Magnus Carlsen, he finds it. No anticipation needed. Bishop to g7. You simply defend your pawn. And Magnus is now up 2 pawns. g5 though. And now e4. A deadly mistake. Magnus Carlsen has got many winning moves here. He's got 7 minutes on the clock. He's one of the best endgame players. This is not freestyle chess anymore. This is a opposite colored bishop endgame, which is notoriously drawn, and a rook endgame. If the rooks get traded now, it's a draw. It's a dead draw. Even though Magnus is up 2 pawns, because you just blockade on the light squares, and the dark squared pawns can't get through. So you got to keep rooks on the board. You might be able to trade them in certain situations. This ain't one of them. e4 now. Might be causing some weaknesses. Remember, your pawns are on light squares. This bishop might be able to target them somehow. The rook might be getting in, and it's problems. f5, look at that, perfect. And now, rook b7. Hikaru here has to find an incredible sequence of moves. He has to find the best move in a row, 3 times in a row, to hold. Magnus Carlsen is threatening various discovered attacks on the black king, and forcing this pawn to h7 and to h8 to make a queen. Hikaru, you can see on the board, must find f4 check, which he does. And after king f2, he must play rook c2 check. And after king a1, he has, again, only one move that still holds the game. And that is to play rook takes h2 and get his rook behind the pawn to stop promotion. Because even you can have bishop f8 and king g8, there is no pushing because the rook is behind the pawn. And this would have been the drawing sequence. But here, instead, Hikaru Nakamura played bishop to a2. And he loses the game because of bishop f8 check. And Magnus Carlsen, for the first time, has won a tournament in freestyle chess. He has won various games over the past, but he finally wins a leg on the Grand Slam Tour. He wins in Paris, and he defeats his longtime rival, I don't know, friend sometimes, Hikaru Nakamura, in a sensational game.